Welcome to the 9th episode of the University School True Crime Podcast. I'm here with my co-host,
Joey Valerio,
and
Mr. Singer.
And we will be covering the Vanessa Guillen case. This case is a solved case, just like some of the last few that we've done. But the main suspect, isn't in prison. The person who helped him is in prison. You'll see why as this case unfolds. But it was just a completely messed up case in general. So Vanessa was born on September 30th, 1999 in Houston, Texas, to her parents, Rogelio and Gloria Guillen. And she has 5 other siblings as well. She was known for being very friendly and a quote, spunky person, and was super high energy, and she was also athletic and loved to play soccer, especially in high school. She graduated high school in 2018 and was in the top 15% of her class, and she knew she wanted to be in the Army, so in June of 2018 she applied. She was a private first-class Army soldier, specifically a 91F, which is a small arms and artillery repairer, and she lived and worked off of the Fort Hood military base. This is the largest military base in the country. And she went missing on April 22nd, 2020 in Fort Hood, Texas.
Oh, so this is recent.
Yeah, this is very,
Very recent.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, the thing about this case is it was solved very quickly, but the person who helped the main suspect is still on trial because she hasn't gotten a trial date yet, so she isn't necessarily serving an actual time, but she is still being held.
Yeah, she's not serving an actual sentence.
So at first in the Army, things were going really well for Vanessa, and she was really proud of herself. And 3 weeks before she went missing, her mom said that she was acting really weird and different compared to how she usually was. And it seemed as if something was wrong, like Vanessa was upset over something. And Vanessa and her mother were really close, so her mom knew her better than anybody and kind of had those motherly instincts when something seemed wrong.
Yeah.
Her mom said that she had become withdrawn, she wasn't sleeping well, not communicating right, and like I just said, she had that motherly instinct that her daughter was in some sort of trouble. Eventually, Gloria got it out of Vanessa that she was being sexually harassed by one of the sergeants on the base. And I mean, that's kind of what Fort Hood is, because it's such a large base.
A lot can get
my stepdad, who works for the
around.
Air Force, when I kind of asked him, like, what's about Fort Hood that just isn't right? And he goes, what goes on there besides sexual harassment?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't know what else goes on there besides that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that tells you somebody that's in the government, somebody who works for a branch of military, is saying something like that.
A lot of things go, I think, unreported because I think there's a code that you sort of handle things internally. So it's hard to have some sort of paper trail of complaints.
It's very easy for things to get swept under the rug,
Especially at such a big
a
base.
military
like
base.
this.
One, a military base, and 2, a military base of that size.
And you don't want a PR problem too.
Right.
I mean, recruiting for the armed forces is the easiest thing, and if all of a sudden you think, I'm going to join the armed forces and going to be harassed in some way,
Right.
You figure out something else to do.
So Vanessa would not give her mom this guy's name, and she knew that her mom would call and, make a scene over this and fight for her, which obviously would have been the right thing to do, but Vanessa was scared for that to happen because of, like we just said, her own reputation. Her mom offered to report it for her, but she told her mom that she knew of other women in the Army who had reported similar situations, and the Army did nothing. So, I mean, like you just said, internally figuring it out.
Right.
In a lot of cases, the Army didn't even believe these women. She said that this sergeant was watching her and stalking her while she was working out and was making her feel very uncomfortable. And it was taking a toll on her mentally. Vanessa's mom told her multiple times that they needed to report it, but Vanessa kept saying that she was going to take care of it herself. Her family claims that right before she went missing, she was about to make a report. And I think that's kind of what led to everything that unfolded right after.
And that's definitely, it's very much, it makes sense that she would go missing right as she's about to make a report.
Right.
Someone probably caught wind of that and was like, hey, go deal with this.
And she was incredibly close with her sister Myra, and she had spoken to her the night before she went missing, and they were talking about Vanessa buying a new car. And everything seemed fine between both of them, and there were no red flags at all. So, I mean, this isn't like, Vanessa, ran away from the military base.
Right.
It was something internal that still not all the details are out a couple of years later.
Yeah, I mean, it is still fairly recent, though, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, on April 22nd, 2020, she went missing. On April 23rd, she was reported missing by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division. Afterwards, on June 9th, a $15,000 reward was offered for any information that could lead to her whereabouts, and later this was increased to $25,000. On June 16th, a week later, the League of United Latin American Citizens announced that they would match that, which made it $50,000 in rewards. From the beginning, many people pointed out that it was mysterious that she could go missing on an army base.
Yeah.
And the questions raised: how could she not be seen leaving the base?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, yes, it's a massive base, but at the same time, they have all of the staff to cover that big of an area.
It is a military base. It's kind of like, it's not like it's not guarded. It's not like there's not people walking around 24/7 doing their rounds.
Right.
So it's like,
And you got to come and go through a gate.
yeah.
And I've got to assume that there's some kind of, video or some record of people coming and going, even if they're not stopping you to ask who you are. That's really strange.
Right.
And her family and friends were absolutely devastated that she was missing, and everybody was demanding answers. Her mom spoke out in an interview and said that if her daughter was not found alive, she would shut down Fort Hood. And unfortunately, Vanessa's remains were found in July of 2020, but since then a lot more information has come out. So taking back to April 22nd, Vanessa was not even supposed to be working that day. She got called into work by somebody who still has not been identified, and she was going to be working in the arms room because she was repairing that type of stuff. And she was working, and a witness said that she left to go to a different room, which was another arms room, and she was going to this room to confirm some serial numbers between firearms. This room was being managed by a specialist, Aaron Robinson. He was also 20 years old, and what was strange is that Vanessa left her bank card, her Army ID, and her keys in the arms room that night. When Aaron was asked about Vanessa visiting that room, he said that she did visit that room, which, matches with what the witness said. When she came in, he said he helped her read off serial numbers, gave her some paperwork, and a serial number for a firearm that needed to be worked on. He claimed that when she left, he was under the impression she was heading to the motor pool. The people working there said they were expecting Vanessa, but she never showed up. After investigators looked at her phone records, they found that her last outgoing text message was to Aaron. He claimed that he texted her to let her know that he was in the arms room, and he claims that he left the base that night and went to his house, which was off the base. So, kind of developing on that, some soldiers were able to live on the base and off the base.
Yeah.
It depended on your preference, but you also, I believe you were only allowed to be in a certain radius off the base, so you were still close if you needed to be called in.
Yeah.
So he lived quite close to the base. It's not clear if he was living full-time with his roommate, but he had a girlfriend there named Cicely Aguilar. Aaron said that he was at his house all night with Cicely, and then he went to work again at 6:30 a.m. the next day. About a month later, the Army started interviewing a bunch of witnesses, and multiple of them claimed they saw Aaron walking around the base with a tough box. And he came out of the arms room originally with this box, went through the base, and left. You know, these tough boxes aren't small either. Like, these tough boxes, some of them you have to roll around because they're so heavy.
No, tough box, I'm assuming, is just like an armored box.
It's like a very heavy plastic box.
Yeah.
Like, very, very heavy. It's like essentially if you put Linex on a plastic box.
Okay.
Is essentially what it is.
So is the idea here that you could fit a person inside that box if you really got it?
Essentially.
To happen?
Essentially, yes.
And then you would have no idea if they were coming and going because, of course, people are moving equipment like this all the time.
Right.
Plus, if they're heavy, they're not going to notice.
No, it's heavy.
And they say that they saw him put it in his car and he was struggling to even pick it up. So, I mean, you can kind of assume where that's going to go. And then he drove away with it. The day after they interviewed those witnesses, police felt like there was a good possibility that Aaron had something to do with this, so they used a device on his phone. This device was called a universal forensic extraction device. It basically pulls everything off of a phone, which all physical and logical data. It also pulls GPS location. After this, they saw that he called Cicely several times that night. He was also calling her at early morning hours on the 23rd. And they decided to go talk to Cicely after they found this. When they asked about the many calls, she said that she had lost her phone a few times, but the only inconsistency with this is that these calls were several minutes in length. They started pointing out that these inconsistencies were happening, and then Cicely changed her story. She said that she was basically taking a long drive that night. She said they both went to Belton, Texas to do some stargazing. After this, they went back home. They looked at his GPS records and realized that he was in Belton around 2:30 a.m. on the 23rd, and that he was on or around a bridge. What was weird was that if he was going back to work at 6:30 a.m. the next day on Fort Hood, why would he be multiple hours away at 2:30 a.m.?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't you need sleep?
Also, if they're going if they're going together, that implies they're in the same car.
So why would you need to call her?
Why are they they're not using their phones to talk to each other?
Right.
They're in the same car, so.
And when they tracked his GPS, they tracked his phone going north along the Leon River for 2 hours. Cicely's phone showed the exact same thing, so this was, deemed to be the truth. They ended up doing a search of Leon River on June 21st, and they found the remains of a burnt plastic container. There was also an obvious burn site with disturbed soil underneath, and cadaver dogs picked up the scent of decomposition. But at this time, no remains were found. And 6 days later, there were some contractors working on a fence near the Leon River, and these people were the ones that ended up finding Vanessa's remains. One of the contractors, named Tim, said that there appeared to be bits of lime mixed with dirt and soil scattered across them, and it was becoming very obvious what had happened and who had done this. I mean, like I said, they were both at this location the night that Vanessa went missing, and then they decided to interview Cicely again on June 30th, and she confessed to everything. She said that Aaron contacted her and told her what he had done, that he had killed a female soldier on base, and after she died, he put her in that box and brought her off the base. And after this, he picked up Cicely from her job. Cicely said that when they got to the river, Aaron had already brought the box there before he had picked her up, and he told her that he needed help getting rid of the body. So she decided to help him, which... What was weird was they were only dating for 2 months at this time. So, you would, not that any of this is right at all.
Yeah.
But you would think if you were dating somebody for 2 months, you would not aid them in helping to get rid of a body.
Yeah.
Right. You have your opportunity, instead of being an accessory to murder, to
turn this
them
person in.
And then it's open and shut.
I mean, it's it doesn't really, like, they're not great at hiding this.
Oh, not at all.
Like, it's another one of those cases where it's very, like, blaringly obvious. Also, is a motive ever given as to why he killed her, or?
There's a couple things that come to mind that I've kind of brainstormed over the, however long I've known about this case. One could be, like we said earlier, that she was about to turn in the sexual harassment report.
Oh, and he might have been the one who did it?
That's one big thing. A second thing that I've thought of is that she might have had a higher rank than him and was preventing him from being promoted because she was doing so good at her job. So his only way of promoting himself and getting better at his job was to take her out.
Was to get rid of her, yeah.
Which, obviously, a very petty way of doing it.
Yeah, it's not exactly how the military works, but
Yeah.
one would hope.
You do you. And she told police that in order to get rid of the body, this is probably the least graphic it could actually get, speaking-wise. But they dismembered her and burned her. Just straight to the point.
All right.
Eventually, they stopped because it was not working and the fire was getting way too noticeable with all the smoke. Instead, they dug 3 holes and buried her. And what was weird about all of this was that Cicely then posted on Instagram 2 days after Vanessa disappeared. And she told police that a few days after they got rid of Vanessa's body, they returned back to the river and brought concrete, which she got off of the Facebook Marketplace. They then dug up her remains, attempted to burn them again, and then placed what was left back in those holes and poured concrete over the top.
Like, I don't think I know how to, like, go through all these criminal activities, but this seems pretty just not so bright.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems,
Yeah.
one, very excessive.
Yeah.
2, you're visiting the site where you buried the body again.
Yeah.
So incriminating yourself even more.
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting concrete on top of it. If somebody digs there, who is going to expect to find concrete and not find that suspicious?
Right, especially in 3 places.
In 3 places, too.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Near a river.
I mean, that is something that we find with a lot of these cases is that, like,
It's very unusual.
the people who do this are not smart about it.
And they're very sick and twisted.
Like, I mean, we saw with the Black Dahlia even, like,
Yeah.
that was one of the better ones, and even then there was still phone calls of George Hodel being like even if I did do this, they'll never be able to justify it because my secretary's dead.
like
What? Yeah.
not
Yeah.
incriminating yourself at all.
Like, yeah, it's like, so, and like the Emma Walker, was it, where her boyfriend,
Yeah, her ex-boyfriend shot her.
yeah, like, he goes into a car with his friends with the gun.
And then admits
And
to
then
it
admits
and
to
says,
them.
we're going to get rid of this gun in the
Yeah.
river. It just doesn't make
Like,
sense.
things like that, it's just, they don't,
It couldn't be any more of a cut and dry case.
right, you don't think it through all the way, I guess.
Which is making me wonder when you're saying that this hasn't been resolved in any way. Like, what's going on? That's what I'm interested to get to.
That was my big thing with the Black Dahlia was, like, how do you not know that this person did it?
Well, we're about to get
And so-
to why he's not serving jail time. So, these two then burned their clothes and cleaned up and acted like nothing happened. Aaron was considered a suspect at this time and was being held in his room at Fort Hood. He had no clue that Cicely was talking to the police, and so police had Cicely call Aaron, and she went over everything that they did, and Aaron agreed to all of it. They also found texts between Aaron and Cicely that were news articles about remains being found at Leon River. Later on, during a phone call, Aaron said that they had maybe found the pieces, but he wasn't sure if it was Vanessa.
They maybe found him.
He wasn't sure if it was Vanessa because they hadn't confirmed it yet.
Oh my goodness.
And even though he was supposed to stay in his room, on June 30th, he somehow left the base and was tracked down walking on a street a few days later on July 2nd. Here is why Aaron is not serving jail time.
I just want to start off. I doubt this.
When they approached him, Aaron decided to, for lack of a better word, be a coward. He shot himself on the spot. And Cicely is currently being held at the Bell County Jail and is charged with willfully helping Aaron in conspiracy to mutilate or conceal an object and is facing up to 20 years in prison.
I mean, yeah, that's one way to go about not serving jail time.
That's it.
So he's serving something else eternal,
Yeah.
just not jail time.
Interesting.
Okay.
Not incriminating in the slightest either.
Well, I mean, he'd already corroborated.
He had already
everything.
agreed to
So he
it,
was
yeah.
he had confessed. The fact that he wasn't in more secure holding.
That's
was-
what everybody's
was
confused
surprising.
about is how he escaped.
Yeah.
Is that he was being held in his room on Fort Hood. And he somehow escaped, and escaped with a gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that they're not prevalent, but how did he get?
How did he
access
get
to
out?
one
Yeah, if he's
when-
locked in a room.
Right.
with suspicion of murder?
Right.
Right. So more recently, Cicely and the Army have been putting out a story to kind of cover Aaron's tracks, as well as make it seem like it was more of some internal thing between the Army. And the story is basically saying that Cicely was married to somebody else on the base, and so she was cheating on him with Aaron. And apparently Vanessa found out, and they claim that Aaron was so upset that she might report him to the Army, and he would get in trouble. Because that is in basically the Army's philosophy and their, I guess you could call it terms and conditions of what they have. If you have infidelity while you're in the Army, you basically get kicked out.
Okay.
I don't know, that's
So murder is the next best option.
essentially.
Yeah.
But Vanessa's family thinks that this is all lies. I mean, kind of like I was alluding to earlier, that it's just kind of a cover-up story.
Seems plausible as a cover-up story.
Yeah.
It seems very likely to be a cover-up story, so, I mean, yeah.
And I mean, maybe there were some truthful statements in there, but it was more likely that she was going to report him for sexual harassment, and that's why he did it. Because I mean, that makes more sense than
Right.
you know he was gonna.
Because, like, why would Vanessa really care that much about it?
Right, like.
Like, it doesn't affect her.
Right, like
So,
I mean,
yeah.
it. Like yeah, she kind of works with him, but like
Yeah.
it's not like she was the one doing anything.
Right.
It was like,
She wasn't involved in it, so I don't see why she would report that.
I mean, kind of like I said a couple times earlier, the Army's just trying to protect themselves in this situation.
Right.
Of course.
Like, yeah, sexual harassment doesn't happen in our, prestigious, on our prestigious bases and stuff like that. And Myra visited the base to look for Vanessa and Aaron. Myra went to the base to look for Vanessa, and Aaron went up to her and laughed in her face about Vanessa being missing. I mean,
Classy.
I don't know if you can incriminate yourself anymore.
Huh.
Well, you can, but
I mean, I don't.
this guy's on the edge of not being able to incriminate yourself anymore.
I really don't know. I got nothing for that.
Yeah, you figure like basic human compassion would be like, oh, I'm concerned for you, and also somebody who you serve with.
Right.
You should have that sense of concern as well, and to have the opposite is problematic.
Yeah.
It's very possible that Aaron had some help when he did this, and the Army's trying to cover that up specifically. So it could be either of the two. They claim that the Army claims that Aaron killed her between 10:23 and 11:13 a.m., but our lawyers are arguing that this is not possible for reasons that will be mentioned a little bit later. And the Guillen family lawyer has brought up that the Army had these witnesses on base telling him that they saw Aaron leaving the base with this big box on the day that she went missing, like I said earlier, that alone could have been enough for them to consider him a suspect, where he wouldn't have had enough time to actually do any of the stuff that they did, or at least go back a few days later.
But it's very convenient to pin the murder on the one guy who confessed to it and is dead.
Yeah.
Because then all your troubles go away.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, they took no action to look into him as a suspect, considering he had this really heavy, big box that he was carrying out of the base. They also asked Aaron to do a polygraph test, and he refused. Now, polygraph tests aren't 100% accurate, but still, to refuse to do a polygraph on something like this...
The refusal to do anything when you're in a
the main
legal
suspect
situation like this, the refusal to do anything automatically incriminates you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd hope that innocent people would say, like, whatever it takes to clear my name and to help solve this problem. I know some people are wary of the criminal justice system in that regard, and they say, well, you know, if I am innocent, but you get me in here, like, could you talk me into saying something or doing something? And that's happened before, but this doesn't feel like one of those situations.
It's like if you're like in a traffic stop or like something, and like the officer asks to search your, like, if they have permission to search your vehicle and you say no, it's like, what are you hiding? Why are you not okay with that? If you have nothing to hide, then what's stopping you?
And I mean, then there's some people that will argue, oh, they're gonna plant something in my car. It's like,
or if you don't have cause,
Right.
why are you asking to search? And then it causes this whole escalation. I mean, I feel like that's another podcast. Like, that's a whole separate thing to talk about how those things progress.
The legal system is definitely something we could make a podcast about.
Yeah.
that would be.
I'm sure there are a couple.
That would be a very long recording session.
Yeah.
But Aaron, instead of doing the polygraph, he did an interview with the polygraph expert. Don't know. But the expert said that Aaron was lying. He could just tell, based off his body language and the things he was saying and stuff like that. And, I mean, kind of like we said earlier, they didn't do a good job of making sure he stayed on the base. And when the Army was asked about how he got the gun, they said that it was his personal gun, like I said, but would not explain how he got off the base. Also, witnesses were currently being questioned. I know as of early 2021, I don't know if any of them still are, since the trial still is yet to happen. But some of them claimed that Vanessa was seen on the base at 12:30 to 1 p.m. on the day that she went missing. And comparative to the Army's statement, I mean, that would have been impossible.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible either way. If the witnesses are telling the truth, it would have been impossible for the Army statement to be right. And if the Army's telling the truth, then it would be impossible for the witnesses' statements to be right. So, I don't know. And on top of this, some of these witnesses are changing their stories, and he used a hammer to kill her, and that hammer has never been found.
Wait. Say that again?
The hammer that he used to bludgeon her has never been found. And it was an Army hammer. It wasn't his own personal.
An Army hammer.
And you think they would be, foolish enough to, with their concrete and their digging and all that stuff, to leave it there somewhere. So, but it's obvious, it's got to be somewhere.
And like I said earlier, there's still no answer into who called her into work that day.
There's no...
Like, it could have been Aaron, it could have been somebody setting her up, it could have been, any of these things. And the Army is supposed to do checks every day and make sure that everybody's accounted for. And during this time, it was reported that all soldiers were safe on the base. And apparently the guy who did the checks admitted that he was being lazy and said he saw Vanessa when he didn't. And Vanessa's family has called for a congressional investigation And on July 2nd, 2020, Fort Hood came out and said that there is no evidence Aaron sexually harassed Vanessa. In 2020, there was a social media campaign for other women who have been in similar situations, and Vanessa was promoted from private first class to specialist on July 1st, 2020, after she had been murdered. And Vanessa's mother wants Congress to investigate Fort Hood's handling of the disappearance, and I would assume that she also wants them to see how Fort Hood's been handling all these other situations that go on there.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like it should definitely be looked into, since, I mean, you said your what was it your dad who said that, like you asked him what goes on in Fort Hood, and he said other, like
What are you asking about other than sexual
Yeah.
harassment?
Like, it's very clearly well known that this is a reoccurring issue there, and so like the fact that there hasn't been more investigation into that, it does not sit right with me in the slightest.
Yeah, when something is a one-off incident, if somebody, does something that's way out of character for an institution, everybody jumps on that. When it's systemic and it's been going on and it's one of those things that everybody knows about but doesn't talk about, that's the situation we're in right here.
Just kind of gets swept under the rug. It's like,
Yeah.
That's
happens all the
just
time.
another day at Fort Hood.
And the longer it's been going on, the more people are going to get in trouble, and it's going to come from the top. So all these
Right.
folks are going to get, removed from their posts, discharged from the Army, and we're talking about, veteran, officers who've made their career there and are hoping to, get their cushy pensions, and all of a sudden they might be facing, things that keep them from getting that.
Yeah.
and it's like, it's the more sexual harassments and sexual assaults that they were to report from Fort Hood would, you would think eventually lead to Fort Hood being shut down.
yeah.
And since it's the biggest base in the U.S., people, or at least higher ups in the Army, wouldn't want that to happen because of how many soldiers are actually on that base.
And that's another thing. It is the biggest base, so it's going to be, like, I feel like the government couldn't afford to shut down a base of that size.
They'd have to come in and
Yeah.
restructure all of the leadership, and,
Right.
and that kind of rot and corruption has
Yeah.
has a way of coming back too. The
Right.
amount of oversight that would have to be done is extraordinary, but it obviously needs to happen. This is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what else to say on that. Like,
Yeah. It's
Fort Hood is very suspicious in all of this and a lot of other situations that, a lot of us probably don't know about. It's probably all people, within the Army and within military in general that knows, what goes on there. But a lot of us who aren't involved in that stuff probably don't even know.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of stories that only the higher ups in the military know. I can guarantee that.
That we're never going to know.
Yeah, that the public will never find out about.
And you can start getting embroiled in conspiracy theory and all these things. I mean,
Yeah.
even just around this case, the amount of stories you could potentially spin.
Right.
I mean, just like the Army has, like,
Exactly.
if this timeline and this timeline were to exactly happen perfectly, then this is the outcome. It's
Right.
like, well, now you're just putting together a story that is full of what ifs and everything has to go perfect for you to be right.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of what throws the Army under the bus here. Is it's like what Vanessa was reporting to her mom was like perfectly in line with what would have made sense, and then the Army come out and create a whole different timeline that would have said Vanessa and her family were lying.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but this, I'm just hoping that the legal system can get Cicely incarcerated for a while,
Yeah.
considering she accomplished all of this.
I mean, it's definitely deserved. I mean, like we said, the only reason that Aaron's not in jail right now is because he's dead.
It's because he decided he didn't want to face jail
Right.
time.
And that's just really an act of cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you'll see other cases with that, but that's
Yeah.
you would think somebody that's brave enough to go on an army base, serve there, and then do something as malicious as this
Yeah.
would not be so cowardly just to
Yeah.
take themselves out and not have to face any consequences.
And I mean, the standpoint of him being a soldier alone, the amount of discipline that every soldier, regardless of branch in the military, has, they're taught to not run away from things like this, and that's exactly what he did.
If anybody has any last,
Nah,
yeah, you've kind of spoken your mind.
Yeah, and I just want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we just have to wait.
Yeah, we all kind of want to know what's going to happen in that, but it could be years before that gets solved.
Or never.
Yeah. She could just be held for the rest of her life or incarcerated for however many years.
Okay, that will conclude the 9th episode of the University School True Crime Podcast.